Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Dark Winds. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So first and foremost, I love that you got Jim and Joe having Raymond swim, looking for the helicopter, or just any signs of it, which we do find out later on. He does find the helmets. I don't know whether it just happened to stray so far from the helicopter or what. I mean, the helicopter potentially crashed in there, but we do see later on that Raymond found the helmet, so it's just a matter of finding out the exact location of where it is. We saw that it's there on the water, just not exactly sure where. But I do love that poor Jim, when he comes back later on with Bernadette, everyone's laughing at him, and Bernadette's like, what's that all about? He's like, it's about the badge. It's like, he's too embarrassed to admit he's still laughing at him because of him, like everyone watched this spectacle. Even Joe was like, yeah, I'm too old for that, and just kind of sat back, had like an icy while you ran out there, and you're telling Raymond, oh, I could do this all day. I was like, hey. But nevertheless, we make some decent headway in it. Well, Joe and them make some decent headway in the investigation because Bernadette looked into the vehicle that the Mormon family had and ended up finding a receipt that led them to Lester, which Lester was like, yo, that Mormon family was after a particular painting. That painting, a white guy came in here very specific about that, and it's tied to Wanda because as we got with the opening, we find out this is a whole operation. The fact is that it's not just the three we've seen so far. The white guy, Father So, and the other dude. There's at least Yazzie, Wanda, and also Rainn Wilson's character. What is it? Devoted Dan. Was that his name, or is that someone else's name? Either way, like, the car dealer, he's in this. Like, he's the dude that launders the money and makes it clean for them. So, this is a large-scale operation. And it's so interesting because later on, Father So was like, right, this is for the calls. And I'm like, wait, so you're doing this for some reason. Now, I'm curious, is it like we're doing this for our people? Like, yeah, we have to do some nasty, terrible things, but in the long run, or is it almost like some combination of the two of like what calls could they talk about? Because when you hear someone talk about calls, you're almost hearing like it almost sounds like we're dealing with like potentially a domestic terrorist group that might be trying to do something really bad, but it's for like the greater good in their mind. I don't know if that's what it is, because when you hear calls, that's all you can think of. It's like when someone says, I mean, it doesn't always have to be, but sometimes I feel like when someone says they have a cause, there will always be some instinctual negative connotation, because obviously there are good causes, but even good causes can get corrupted from the inside out. So it just immediately makes me think this is some like big time nefarious stuff. So once again, I'm thinking domestic terrorism, but it might not go down that lane. Who knows what they're really up to? But it shows you how involved all these different people are. And so, because at one point you could tell Joe knows something was up because he was driving by and he drove by Yahtzee, and he was like, and turned around and pulled Yahtzee over, and Yahtzee's like, oh yeah, here's my registration, and he's like, oh yeah, sorry for pulling you over, sorry for the inconvenience, because he noticed what kind of truck it was. It was like, probably like, you got a new truck. He's like, that's the problem, like, it's a small enough community that like Joe knows everybody, so he's probably thinking to himself, how the hell did you afford this truck? But then he probably, because we saw him look at the registration and stuff, so maybe it was still within his price range. They probably did enough to make it seem not suspicious. But it's like, you rolling up with a new vehicle you paid with your own money just seemed a little off. Because there's so many pieces there that Joe hasn't really been able to connect them, but because he has nothing necessarily linking it, but a missing Mormon family, the robberies, the murders, like, are they connected? Maybe, maybe not. Because Bernadette and Jim went to talk to Wanda, who had a very besmirching name to call Bernadette. She called her like, oh, was it Runaway Bernie or something like that? It's like, you want to stay away from her, like, because seems like she doesn't always have like the best track record with men. Because like, it's like, right, no one in that, she's like, everyone wants to go to my trailer, but no one wants to ask what clan I'm from. So basically it's like, right, you don't even want to like get to know me, who my background and everything. You just want to get my pants. That's what it comes down to. Because she lives on a trailer, large plot of land, takes care of some horses, and she doesn't want it, she doesn't let anyone step foot into her trailer, which I think kind of is a byproduct of like wanting to, the fact that she kind of seems, she might come off a little standoffish, but she's a really nice person. It's like her and Jim get very close over the course of this episode, because we learn more about him and her. In Jim's case, we learn about his family situation of like, no, he loved it being here. He left not because of his choice. It was just extenuating circumstances. His mom had an abusive boyfriend. Until one point she had enough, hit him with a frying pan, but then she got labeled a witch, and that kind of got brought up in the first episode. Once you start talking witches, that supernatural stuff, people start backing away. So family, like, no, who knows, it's family, but more so like all her friends turned her back on her, and it's just, she was kind of ostracized. So her and Jim left, and he's like, she died sometime later alone, surrounded by strangers, couldn't even be around her friends, her community. So I'm not saying that Jim has a negative view of this place, but all his memories of this place, despite his home being so beautiful, where he grew up was being so beautiful, it has its negative aspects to it. And he did talk about wanting to come back and find the guy who did it and who started all of this. And it was the guy that she hit. Because we never, I don't know if he was someone of importance or whatever, whether he was just probably just some asshole. But for Jim, it's like, right, someone already beat him to it. So you're like, either he's saying that in like cosmic sense of like, well, just in the sense of, okay, like God just struck him down like he was sick or whatever, or just no, he was a scumbag and that scumbag kind of got what was coming to him and he died. I'm kind of obviously leaning more towards that, but it could still be both true. Like God set things in motion so that something, karma would come and bite that guy in the ass type of thing. So, but then we learn about Bernadette, her family sending her to the boarding schools, which, if I remember correctly, and do correct me in the comments down below, my history, like my knowledge of indigenous people is very limited. So, but like the boarding schools aren't a optional thing. Like I think that's, I mean, maybe I'm misconstruing, but like, isn't this one of those things that's kind of like forced on indigenous, this was forced on indigenous people type of situation, kind of like those surgeries that Emma's trying to protect Sally from, so she can't have, so the thing that doctors would without your permission do to make it so you can't have any more babies. I'm curious, is that boarding, because Bernadette was like, yeah, it wasn't that bad at first. In fact, I had people who protected me, but it got worse and worse. She ran away when she was 11. That's actually how she first met Joe. And obviously because of the law, and him being the lawman he had to bring her back. And the second time she ran away was when she found out her parents were sick. But it was a plague house, so I don't know whether that's implying like by the time she got there, they were dead, and it's just like she can't even see or be around her parents' dead body because it's a plague, and it had to be sealed away. So either she couldn't, it's probably a combination of two, couldn't be there with her family in their final moments. Either like even when she got there and they were still alive, it was something she couldn't be near them, or by the time she got back to them, they were already gone and she couldn't even be by their side, to be by their bodies, and you know, who knows how the proper procedural is handled with like that type of situation, with like kind of a, you know, can you do the traditional burial of a body, or does it have to be disposed of a very specific way? So I thought stuff like that was interesting. I do love it and think it's so cute that Bernadette's showing up at the ceremony later, and Emma's looking at her being like, oh, so surprised, when it's like, oh, it's Jim the one because they're like, oh, you showing up here trying your best. It's like, right, because it's like, she's like, because Emma's like, if I'm being completely honest, you kind of look like you don't know what you're doing, and she helped her out, and it's like, oh, I see why you're doing this. And even I'm assuming that's supposed to be Emma's mom then, because the girl, was it Nonoa? The little girl whose ceremony is for, she's her Emma's niece. So I'm assuming that's supposed to be Emma's mother. But they both kind of give Bernadette that look like, hey. It is really sweet to also know, like, Emma and Joe are essentially her parent. Like they basically took her in like a daughter of their own. And she even said that JJ was like her was like a little brother to her. So, but I love later on at the hospital when Sally's kind of, you know, some baby stuff comes up, like Bernadette and Jim are looking at each other, and he's like, "Oh, so what clan are you from?" And then Joe sits down, and they're both so awkward, and he's looking almost like, "What?" He didn't realize he kind of crushed the move, but it was like it's really sweet because it's like, yeah, it's like a dad, like both intentionally and in some cases it'd be a situation of a dad trying to put, leave room for Jesus type of situation. It was almost that move, but he did it unintentionally. He didn't realize the mood that was going on between them. So I thought that was so sweet. It's interesting too because Emma's like, right, when Sally has her baby, I want her to stay with us, which I think Joe has his reservations because it's like, right, it's someone else's kid we're taking in, and like I think it's like, right, we're older now too, so we're taking in someone else's kid and helping raise a baby at the same time too. But I think it's also mainly probably just like, right, it's only been like what 3 years since JJ died, and it's just like that wound hasn't closed, and I think Emma is hoping that this will, it'll add more voices to their house for a while, and it'll end up making it not feel as much as like a ghost home, because like both of her and I think it's always going to be there, but having Sally and the baby around, they hope probably will liven things up again. So, but poor Joe with both the girls in the house, it's like, yeah, like they drank up all my RC. Joe did get both Father So's grandfather and Anna's body, and despite the issues with Anna's dad and stuff, they're very appreciative of the fact is that Joe brought her back to them, so they were able to give her a proper burial and send-off. So because if Joe didn't do this, they would have just, because it's like, right, their bodies would have gone to county, and both families would have had to go up there, but it's like, right, they don't have the money to probably pay to get those bodies out from, because they'd have to pay to get the bodies and make arrangements and stuff like that just to kind of bring them back. So Joe kind of taking it upon himself was, I'm sure, like lifted, doesn't make it easier, but at least alleviating some of that, some of the weight that they would initially have to carry because of all that. So we also learned some interesting things. This is how I am interpreting it, but there's that letter that was meant to be sent to Benjamin So, but he's in Florence, Italy, and it's like, okay. So, and there's also talks about apparently Benjamin So has a brother who's causing trouble. So immediately my brain's like, okay, so the Father Benjamin we know isn't actually, well, Father Benjamin So we know isn't the actual Father So. It's actually his brother using his name, because the real Benjamin So is still in Italy. It's what I'm kind of interpreting that as. Not less his brother's one of the other people, and the people, I would assume the person playing So, because he's the one that was like asking about Joe, and it's like, oh, thank you so much for burying my grandfather, because when Joe went there, you could tell he was looking at him, was like, the place doesn't look like there's someone else even staying here currently. Like, it almost looks like Benjamin So doesn't even know, like, oh, he hasn't been by. And he made a point to be like, oh, I wanted to, because the fact is he wanted to know where Joe lived after Joe buried his grandfather. So maybe they were hoping maybe there's something on his body that they need or something. So that's why he's specifically asking Joe. It's like, oh, so yeah, tell me where you buried my grandfather. It's like something up with that. Then you had the Wanda of it all, which they were kind of ready to kind of kill Wanda if need be. We see that they've kind of gone full Buffalo Bill with how they're handling the Mormon family, got them out about, not of a well, but like a bottom of a pit. So at the very least, they're still alive, but they're an insurance policy, I guess, holding hostages, like if things ever come down to it, hey, we got this family, specifically this white family, and so that, it's like, that's what's going to matter the most. So the FBI aren't really involved. They're going to leave it to Joe because as Joe calls them, high pockets. So it's kind of like, yeah, that's kind of your jurisdiction. Doesn't seem like we really need to care about it. So yeah, not realizing that there's 100%. Well, because Joe at the time wasn't sure if there was one, but now we as the audience know there is a connection between the heist, the murders, and this family kidnapping. But I think this went a lot farther than Wanda was expecting it to be, because it's like, oh, here you are holding a family hostage, and once again, a white family, that's probably not going to be good, but I think it's for the purposes of, like, it's kind of our get out of jail free, like, oh, we'll let these hostages go if you let us go type of, like, it's once again, an insurance policy. So the moment asked for that hair clip of hers. I'm like, that's weird. I was like, why you want to keep that? Who you want to give it to? Because like home dude had the knife out like he was ready to kill her, but it's like, oh, do you think she'll talk? It's like, yeah. Well, we don't want to take any chances. The person they're giving it to is the witch lady we've seen a couple episodes now, and so she ends up performing kind of a ritual, a spell, or a curse, and ends up killing Wanda. Because just earlier in the episode, Lester had said, oh, be careful, Black Widows like to hang around that wood, and she was stocking up the wood, and while she was taking a drink, a Black Widow came and bit her in the neck. But it's because that witch kind of set that in motion with like a spell or a curse. So Wanda's dead, and along with her goes everything that she knew. So it seemed like she was probably dealing with everything in her own way, because she probably knew the truth of everything, like, right, what was happening, what she was a part of, because she was drinking on her way back to the cave that they're hiding out. So I think all of it was taking its toll on her, especially when the cops confronted her like that. That probably really sent her spiraling. So, but at the very least, Father So doesn't know that Jim and Joe are keeping an eye on him because they know something's weird about that. They also got a name from Sally, because the moment she saw Father So, she started like that's when everything happened. So it's like she recognized him, but she gave him a different name. Like it was like Frank something. So it was a different name than So. So it's probably not Father So's. It might not be his name, because it was a different last name. It wasn't So. So it was. What was it like? Frank Nakai or something like that. So who that is, that might be Knife Dude, the dude who actually kidnapped the family last episode. That might be him. I should also talk about it too, kind of end things on a little bit of a higher note. I thought that whole thing at the end, was it Kaneda? I'm probably butchering that. I, once again, know nothing about it, and it kind of seems like, and the closest comparison I feel like I can make to it to kind of wrap my head around probably like kind of a base understanding of it, it reminds me a little bit of a quinceañera. It seems like kind of like that, oh, you're a woman now who's coming into womanhood type of thing, because it's about like, because the girl's like, oh yeah, I got my first period. And I love, she was like, yeah, my dad didn't know what to do, he just stood there with his mouth open. It's like, yeah, so that's why they're helping out. And so... And once again, I don't even know all that goes into a quinceañera. All I know is based on what I've seen in movies and TV shows. Like the most recent one I've seen was like in Superman and Lois. Sarah had one. So like that and a bar mitzvah, like I don't know all that goes into it. Like I know like some of the ceremonial aspects of it, but like I don't know the full history behind it. And you know, maybe there's lead up to it. Like this, there were multiple things. Like she had to like fine grind that like powder something, and running a very, like, I think, like, you have to kind of prep your body to go for these runs, because it's like, right, the longer you run, the more, longer and more kind of, like, great life that you'll have, essentially. So there's layers upon layers of tradition behind what it all represents, and it was kind of a beautiful ritual all around, and, obviously you see like the community aspect of like all the people that are gathered. I think maybe it's just family, but it seems like everyone outside of family is also included to consider. Well, Bernadette's kind of family, because Emma and Joe are kind of like parents to her, but also Jim got invited as well. So I thought it just kind of ending on a happier note. That was kind of like a beautiful ceremony and all that. So, but a lot of really, really interesting things. I'm curious to see where all this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.